Hey, and welcome back to Knit Your Stress Away, your go-to podcast for all things knitting, especially for beginners, but also from the angle of it being the perfect stress relief tool for busy moms. My name is Nadine Medina. I am your host here on this podcast, and today we are in another Knit and Tell Friday, which is always very exciting. These are short episodes that come out every Friday where I give a knitting tip or trick of some sort of knitting help, as well as a little background or a little pulling back the curtain on what I am currently knitting, reading, or other things that might be interesting to you. So let's dive into today. We're talking about yarn. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. Are you a mom who feels overwhelmed, craving a creative outlet, but unsure where to start or how to fit it into your already packed day? I have dedicated this podcast to help you discover practical, guilt-free self-care strategies through the calming practice of knitting. I'll help you break free from the overwhelm, quiet the noise and comparison of social media, empowering you to pick up your knitting needles instead and embrace moments of rest, creativity, and mindfulness. Hi, I'm Nadine, a mom, wife, and passionate knitter. I first learned to knit as a teenager from my grandmother back in Germany, but for some reason, I put my needles down in my 20s. It wasn't until 2020, when everyone was searching for ways to ease the anxiety of the unknown, that I picked knitting back up, and something amazing happened. I found peace and joy in the cozy, calming rhythm of knitting, and now I'm so excited to share my practical tips and habits with you so you can reclaim your time, recharge, and rediscover the things that bring you happiness. It's time to ditch the endless scroll on social media and focus on what truly matters, your well-being. So if you're ready to take control of your stress, ditch overwhelm and social media comparison, rekindle your creativity, and recharge with a hobby you love, this podcast will guide you every step of the way. Take a deep breath, grab your knitting needles, and let's start creating a life with less stress and more joy, one stitch at a time. All right, welcome back to this episode. I'm excited to talk about yarn today because I know that that's an area that can be extremely overwhelming for beginners, but also for everyone else who has already knitted for a little while. It's always this like, wow, there are so many out there, and what do I need to look for, and how do I even know what to get? So today I wanted to talk about what the best yarn pick would be for a beginner, because I know it can be like super overwhelming if you're like, I haven't even touched anything before. I don't even know where to begin and what to pick. And I find it really hard to find good information out there on this because it's just, I don't know why it's not really being touched on. There's a lot of like, oh, there's this yarn and that yarn. And when you go on Instagram, you follow these people, you look at their stuff and it's just like, oh, wow, that's gorgeous. But it's not very clear what kind of yarn it is. What is it made of? What's the thickness of the yarn, like the weight? What would you use it for? And what are the substitutes? Things like that. So I want to go extremely basic today and extremely simple. But I do want to let you know that there is a YouTube video that I have as well that kind of talks about what to look for on a yarn label, because that gives you a lot of information. But I feel like a lot of time that's taken for granted when people talk about yarn. It's like, oh, you just don't even look at that. But you have to look at it if you want to really know what you're getting, and so that you're not having like a bad surprise when you're finally knitting your pattern and you're like, wait, that doesn't really work at all. So you need to understand how the pattern is, like what the pattern is asking for. And if you're not using the exact same yarn that the pattern calls for, which by the way, for a beginner, I always recommend. But if for some reason you're deciding, I don't want that yarn, I want something else, you need to know how to substitute that. And that's for another episode. For now though, I do want to talk about why I think this yarn is best for beginners. By the way, I'm going to link up the way to get to the YouTube video where I talk about the yarn labels in the show notes. So you want to have something as a beginner that is affordable, just in case. You want something that is super easy to work with, meaning that you can see your stitches clearly, You don't want anything shaggy or furry, which is gorgeous and so soft, but it's super hard to knit with because you can't see any stitch definition. So unless you can knit blindly from the beginning, don't do those. And you do not want something that is super thin, so a very light yarn. It looks gorgeous too. Once again, they all do. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. All of them look gorgeous in certain situations, but when you are first starting out, you want to look for a chunky or bulky yarn. The category is number 5. Okay, so when you look at yarn categories and the weights that they are categorized into, you're looking for weight number 5 when you look on your label or when you look online. And the reason for that is, once again, let's go back to that. It's affordable, usually. Well, the one that I'm showing you is affordable for sure. I also would highly recommend one that is a blend of wool and acrylic or just acrylic, because you're easing yourself into using wool yarn. It's a little different. The acrylic is easier to work with, in my opinion, but it's also very easy to take care of versus the wool counterpart. Wool is gorgeous, absolutely. And another reason, though, is that there may be allergy issues for either yourself or the person you're knitting for, and that is something that you just can't tell. So it's a good idea to go with the acrylic blend or with just acrylic. And there's plenty of options out there, but I'm going to share one that is my personal favorite. Another reason why I recommend chunky or bulky yarn is it knits up really quickly. So what that means is that it doesn't take as long to go from beginning to end of your project as it would with a very light or thin yarn. You need smaller needles when you have light yarn, and obviously the yarn weight itself is very light, so it will take a longer time to get that project accomplished and completed. And when you are a beginner, you're eager to finish something, right? Like you're eager to hold something in your hand that you can say, I made that. And that is amazing. And that's what I want for you. So do yourself a favor. Don't be like me. Don't pick a very thin yarn. Pick yourself a chunky or bulky yarn, category 5, so that you can have that feeling of getting something accomplished and to show for very quickly. By the way, you still have time to enroll in the Knitting Made Simple for Busy Moms workshop. Live workshop happens next week. It's December 4th at 10 a.m. EST, Eastern Time, where we're actually going to knit an entire small but mighty project. It's a little headband with a little twist in the front. They're so cute. And we're knitting them out of the exact yarn that I'm recommending to you today, the chunky yarn. Because it just makes itself. Like it's so quick. You can get that done in just a few days. When you're a beginner, of course, it will take a little longer. You might have some hiccups in there. But nonetheless, I am confident that after this workshop, you will be able to knit that thing with the support of our community. And I'm just so excited for you. So the yarn that I'm talking about, again, it's chunky yarn. It's category 5, but it's called Hue and Me. Hue, like the color hue. And it's made by Lion Brand and in collaboration with Two of Wands, which is one of my favorite designers of knitwear. And she has plenty of patterns out there that use this yarn. So it's not going to be hard for you to find something in this type of yarn. And there's another yarn from Lion Brand called Wool Ease. It's a wool blend, and it's Wool Ease Thick and Quick. So they have two different kinds. One is a smaller, like a thinner yarn weight. The other one is the chunky one. And those are my true preferred yarns for beginners. I love them. I actually just got another shipment of them in the mail the other day because I'm making gifts, and obviously not going to tell you what they are until after Christmas, but you can come into our community. I'm going to show pictures of them once they're completed, but I don't want to give anything away here in case somebody listens who these gifts are for. But I just love this yarn. It has a great feel to it. It's really nice and warm. It's perfect for beanies, for, sweaters. I've made 2 sweaters in it, I think it's 2. I've made a beanie for my grandmother a couple years ago. I'm actually going to make myself another beanie out of that yarn. And like I said, a couple of gift ideas that I have. And there's a I can't think of the word, a cowl that I'm also going to make out of this yarn. So for the wintertime, this is the perfect yarn. I love it so much for the versatility. You may have actually seen, if you follow me on Instagram just recently, I've made some videos where I was wearing my absolute favorite scarf, infinity scarf that I've ever made to date. It's also by Two of Wands and it's called the Illusionist scarf. That one is a little bit more tricky for the technique, but once you're past your beginner stage, you're going to be able to pick that one up too. But that's also the same yarn. And I love wearing that. For me, it's very important, especially on a sweater and a scarf, for it to not be scratchy and itchy, because I can't stand that. This yarn has none of that. And I love it so much. All right. So you can get this yarn at Lion Brand directly, and they may have a Black Friday sale this weekend. Totally possible. They do have quite a few sales throughout the year as well. So I would definitely recommend waiting for a sale. Highly likely there's one this weekend. And if you are already enrolled in the live workshop for next week, you have gotten an email from me with links to get the yarn and get it into your hands so that you can show up with the yarn to the workshop. And did I just say, I think I just said the workshop is on Tuesday, but it's not. It's Wednesday. Wednesday is December 4th. Sorry. So I don't know why I keep thinking it's on a Tuesday, but it's actually Wednesday, December 4th at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So hopefully, you got that right, but it's also going to be in the show notes with the link to save your seat if you want to. So let's move on to what I am currently working on. I was finishing the headbands for the workshop because I want to show what they look like when they're completed, but I also want to not knit too many of them so that I can actually have a chance to knit another one while we're in the workshop, and I can show you all the different ways to accomplish that and the techniques that you're going to need, which sounds like it's a whole bunch, but it's not. It's like actually super simple. And I'm going to give you the instructions on how to complete it as well at home. So that's what I was working on currently. I'm also still finishing, at the time of recording it, I'm finishing a little tiny scarf called a Sophie scarf. It is this tiny skinny scarf that only goes around your neck once or twice. Turns out mine will only go around once because I used scrap yarn and I actually measured it out. So I weighted the yarn. And then when I was at the halfway point of the weight of the leftover yarn, I've started decreasing because there's you increase to one side. And then once you're in the middle of the scarf, you decrease again so that it's even. And yeah, I'm almost done with that one. And it's super soft. It's so cute. I'm going to definitely show it. It's already in some of my reels on Instagram, if you may have spotted it, but it's definitely going into the Facebook group as well as the finished product. What else? I'm working on something else. I'm going to start working on gifts, obviously, because it's soon. Christmas, it's so soon. I can't believe how soon. It's coming over me like a wave. I'm like, oh my gosh, we only have a month left in this year. Crazy. And I don't know if I'm the only one who feels like this, but we've just done this. We've just been here. I'm not mad because I love Christmas time, but it's just funny how quick that comes and how I'm always behind starting these gifts. So don't be like me. Come to the workshop, learn how to make the headbands, and you can actually gift one or two of these headbands. I am sure you're going to be able to do that. All right, mamas, this is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and for all the links to the things that I talked about in this episode, including the yarn and the YouTube videos about yarn labels and how to, what to look for, is all going to be in the show notes, as well as the link to save your seat in the Knitting Made Simple for Busy Moms live workshop that happens next Wednesday, not Tuesday. And I hope that you are enjoying the rest of your weekend if you're listening to this on a Friday. If not, just enjoy the rest of your day and come into the Facebook community. If you have any questions that you would like answered, you can also check your Instagram and just hop over in a DM, send me a message. I'm happy to help with any questions that you have about this episode, about the things I talked about, or about the workshop. Have a lovely rest of your day. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.